Hello, and welcome to this month's Synoptix Training. Today, we're going to be learning about detail areas, which are used to create lists, and we're going to learn how to use those in conjunction with accounting cells. We're also going to learn about something called print once on change, and we're going to be learning about something called dynamic columns and how we can use those all in conjunction with each other. Synoptix has two main tools, accounting cells and detail areas. Accounting cells are used to get a single number, or you can think of it as reporting at a summary level. Detail areas are used to create lists. As an example, we could create a list of all of our account numbers and their corresponding descriptions, among many other possibilities. There's real power in using accounting cells and detail areas together. For instance, we could make a list of departments and then get information about that list of departments. This would give us a comprehensive list of departments and any desired information such as budget numbers or actual expenses by department. You can also build the report to be filterable so it will function like a template at runtime. So we're going to show you how to build a very useful report in a number of clicks. We're going to build a departmental expense report to show our expenses for the last 12 months. And we're going to use this using detail areas or lists, and then we're going to enhance this with our accounting cells and a couple of other new functionality that you may or may not be familiar with. So to start off, we're going to go and take a look at the report designer here by clicking on the report and going to modify, and I've got it up here on the other tab. The left-hand side are the components that we're going to use to build this particular report. And don't worry if yours doesn't look exactly the same. That is going to vary a little bit by ERP. The detail cells that are listed here, again, may not be exactly the same. That's okay. But these are what we are going to use to build our detail area or lists. Now again, we're building what we're calling a departmental expense report, but there may be some different terminology depending on your environment. We've heard this referred to as the cost center, sometimes the unit or department. Those are really all the same thing. In my particular environment, it's going to be referred to as cost center, but again, you could also think of that as the department or the unit. There's two ways that we can start creating this report. We can either drag and drop into the desired cell, or we can just double left click, which is what I'm going to do. The row turns green, and that's our visual indicator that we have now created a list. The properties of that list are going to be, over here on the right-hand side. Our detail area properties are what I like to think of as our list properties. So right now, we've just built a list of all of our cost centers. We also want to see the corresponding cost center description. We're going to make that a little wider just so we don't have that cut off at runtime. So that'll be our department name or description. It's always a good idea when you're building a report like this to build your list first, then we'll worry about adding data to our list. Now, right now, this would be a completely unfiltered detail area or list. So the next step that I would advise is to filter our list. And in this case, we want to filter them by our expense accounts. So over here on the right-hand side, we're going to add a filter, and this list is going to be the same list that we see here on the left-hand side, and again, this may vary by ERP. I'm going to filter by account code, and then we'll define the criteria right below. We mentioned earlier that we want to make this filterable at runtime so it will function as a template. These question marks function as wildcards, which can be any number 0 to 9 or letter A to Z. I'm going to come over to the object code portion, and we're going to do anything that starts with 5, and we're going to leave everything else as wildcards, which is what is going to allow us to then filter this at runtime by these different segments. And in my environment, that may be things like the fund, department or cost center, etc. We'll validate to see what accounts meet that criteria, and then we'll apply that. Let's save our work and give it a run and see if it's the list that we are looking for. Detail area or list, those are really the same thing. And just for a little bit of formatting here, I'm also going to do my alternate row colors. Okay, let's go ahead and give that a run. We're going to talk about the left-hand side here a little bit later, but for now, we just want to make sure that we have the correct list, our department number and name. We're going to do a little bit of formatting here over on the designer screen. I'm just going to format this to the left. And we're going to move this to the right. And let's give that another save and run. Okay, let's do just a little bit more here. So, okay, again, just a quick review here. So once from the left-hand side, we've added the components that we want to see. In this case, our cost center, our department, and its corresponding description. The next step is we added a filter. We chose account code, and we defined the criteria for that filter. In this case, any object code that's starting with 55. We validated that and made sure that the rest were wildcards, which is going to allow us to filter at runtime. We're then going to come down and we're going to run our report to get an idea of how it looks. Again, we've just created a list at this point, or detail area. We have not added any numbers yet. The first step is to make sure that we're happy with our list, and then we're going to add in some information to that. So you can see now we have on the left-hand side our department number and corresponding name. And if we're happy with the list, which looks good to me, we're going to add some more information to this list. So these detail areas or lists can be enhanced by having a list inside of a list. For example, we can have a list of departments, which is what we have now. And for each department, we can get a list of object codes or natural accounts. And we call this functionality print once on change. So what we're going to do here now, we're going to come down one row over on our detail cells here. I'm going to go down to my object code. I'm going to double left click. And again, you could also drag and drop. Notice that the next row turns green as well, so rows 11 and 12 are now part of the same detail area or list, and I'm also going to bring in the object description, and let's make this just a little bit wider here, and just to help us a little bit with what we're looking at, I'm going to do a little formatting. Let's make this bold, and maybe change the text color, and we'll make that bold as well to stand out. I'm going to save my work, and now we're going to rerun this to see what happens now that we've added basically a list within a list. So we'll come back here and rerun our report. And you can see now we have an enhanced list. So at the top, we've got our department number and name. And now we've got our object code and description, and I'm going to do just a little bit of formatting here. Maybe move this over to the left. Let's save our work and take a quick peek here how that looks. And there we go. So now we've got a list of our department numbers. Underneath each department number are the object codes or the expenses for that particular department. So again, that's a list within a list. You can also think of that as a print once on change. So anytime that it changes, it's basically giving us a different list here. In this case, again, you can see we're doing this by department and object code. We're going to make a couple more enhancements to this report now. So now that we have built our list, we're ready to add some numbers to this report for our actual expenses. Now, this is where we're going to use our accounting cell in conjunction with our detail area. So we'll add our accounting cell, and the 111 is just a placeholder. We won't see the actual balance until we run the report, and we can format this just like anything else. For instance, I may want to remove the decimals. The properties are going to be over here on the right-hand side. So your source of calculation, where that's actual or budget, corresponding ledger ID, and time period. In this example, we want to do data for the month. Let's save our work, come back over and rerun our report. And now we've got a list of all of our expenses for each department. Now we don't have any totals yet. We'll add that in a moment here, but you can see that it is now becoming a much more comprehensive report. The next thing we want to introduce you to are dynamic columns, which work great in conjunction with our detail areas or lists. Dynamic columns can work with any desired time period, whether that's month, year, quarter, etc. Month and year are the most common, allowing for easy comparison of historical data. Before we add that dynamic column, we're going to add what's called a lookup function. Lookup functions automatically add information to a report, and we got there by clicking on this icon right here. Here's the list of all the lookup functions, and I'm going to use one called @month_year, which returns a month and year based upon the report dates, and then we can add or subtract months based off that run date. So I'm going to use this one here, @month_year, and then the true is going to give us a format of month and year all spelled out. So right above here, we're going to add our lookup function. And these are going to be covered in more detail in future tutorials, so don't worry about that. And again, this is just going to add a label for the month and year, so we don't really have to guess what we're looking at here. So I'm going to do a little formatting as well to this. Okay, let's save our work. And now let's add a dynamic column. We can click anywhere in the column that we'd like to make dynamic. The important thing to pay attention to is your calculation or time period. That's what we're going to expand our column by, whether it's month, year, quarter, etc. In this example, we want to get a 12-month history of our expenses, so we're going to do this by month. The dynamic columns icon is right above column I in my example, but right here, dynamic columns. When we click on that, we'll get the properties for our dynamic columns. Number of sets is number of whatever your calculation is. In this case, number of months. It could also, again, be number of years, days, weeks, etc. So because we wanted to see a 12-month history, we're going to change that from a 2 to a 12. And we can go backwards or forwards in time based off of our run date. I want to go historical, so I'm going to stick with negative here. We'll go ahead and save that. The column turns green, giving us a visual indicator that this is now what we call a dynamic column. And again, the properties for that, we're going to do this for 12 months. Let's save our work, come back to our tab here and rerun it. And now what we're going to get is based off of this run date, it's going to start there and then go backwards 12 months. You can go as far back as you would like, as long as that data does exist within your ERP. That's really the only limitation when it comes to pulling in historical data. Okay, now we've got a pretty cool report here. Now, by default, we don't apply any filtering. We're going to here momentarily. So you'll see up here, it says filtered for department none. So this is going to be all of our department or cost centers. We started in May, and then as we work our way over, it's going to go backwards 12 months. We're going to add some subtotals and totals to this in just a moment here. You can see right now what we've got. Let's go back to our designer now, and let's add our subtotals and totals. First thing I like to do is add a label. Let's just do a subtotal as an example. We'll just make that a label and make that stand out a little bit. And then just like everything else, we're going to add from the left-hand side by either dragging and dropping or double left clicking, which is what I'm going to do. Any formatting options here, if we want any blank lines before or after our subtotals here. And then we can adjust these. These usually default pretty well. So we are subtotaling for cell D12, our actual expenses, based on A11, our cost center or department. So let's go ahead and save our work. We'll give that a run. And again, just a reminder, when we first run these reports, or anytime you run a report by default, we do not apply any filtering unless you tell us to. That is the next thing that we are going to go over here, and then we'll conclude today's training. So now you can see we've got our subtotals. And again, this is ran for every department. So let's introduce now filtering over here on the left-hand side where it says accounting filters. There's really two types of filters. There are custom filters that you can build. There's also pre-built filters based off of your ERP. Custom filters will be here under variable, and these are commonly things like a hierarchy, president, deans, managers, individual departments. We also, again, based off of your ERP, do have different filters based off of your chart of accounts. In this example, fund, subfund, cost center, activity, object. Let's filter by cost center or department. If we're just choosing one, for example, HR, we'll select and add the filter and then rerun the report. And now it's going to run just for our one selected department. We're not just limited to one department. We can actually select as many as we would like. And we'll show that functionality here in just a moment. If we look up top, we can see this is filtered for the one department that we selected. And we now have our 12-month history of expenses for that department. If we want to add some more, perhaps payroll, and no, let's just say IT. We have two options when we select more than one filter. We can select the filter tree or leave it unchecked. Let's quickly go through both. When it's unchecked, if we go to run the report here, we're going to get these three departments all rolled up together. Now, we won't be able to break them out individually. That's what the filter tree functionality is going to give us. And we're going to go over that here momentarily. But again, when that filter tree box is unchecked, if you look at the top here, we'll see it was filtered for those three departments that I selected. If we then select the filter tree functionality and rerun the report, we'll see over here on the left-hand side the status of those. We're going to get this in two different views. We're going to get everything rolled up together as well as broken out individually. So we can see over here that these are running, and as soon as those are finished, you'll see it turns into a green checkbox. The default view is the same one we just saw with everything selected. but we now have the option of looking at these individually. The last option that you may have seen here is we can also view this by that hierarchy that we saw, and that would look like this. So now over here on the left-hand side, we're looking at this at the provost or department level, and as we click through these, some of these have data, some don't. We can see these for the different departments. If we happen to be the manager, we can see these at the manager level where we see them all rolled up together as well as broken out individually, and we can go up to the dean or president level. So again, just a quick overview of today's training. We introduced the concept of building lists or detail areas using our detail cells on the left-hand side. We started by building a list of our cost center or department, and then we built a second list or list within a list, what we referred to as print once on change, by bringing in the object code and object description. We then filtered our list to just be our expense accounts and utilized wildcards to make this a filterable report. We then added numbers to our report via the accounting cell using accounting cells in conjunction with detail areas. We then added a dynamic column for 12 months to give us a 12-month historical data for our expenses. And last but not least, we added a subtotal to the report, ran the report, and utilized different filtering options at runtime. Hope you've enjoyed today's training on detail areas, print once on change, dynamic columns, and filtering. We look forward to seeing you next month's training. Have a great day.